action, focus, discipline. This is the Zero Excuses Podcast. Each and every week, we talk to high-performing, inspirational athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. We ask powerful questions to extract their tools, strategies, and life lessons for you to crush your excuses, to break out of your comfort zone, and accomplish your ambitious dreams and goals. Here's your host, Kenyon.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Zero Excuses Podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. We've got a great guest lined up for you guys today. We have Scott Beebe, head coach of mybusinessonpurpose.com and also the host of the Business on Purpose podcast, where it's his mission to help small business owners liberate themselves from the chaos of working in their business and really regain control over their time so that they're not spending all their time on businesses and so that they have the time to spend with their family and work on their hobbies or whatnot. Before we get into today's show, just have a couple quick reminders. If you haven't already joined our free closed Facebook group, you can do so at kenyonziska.com/group, and you can join the close to 500 people in the group where they're having conversations about the tools and the strategies and carrying the conversations that we have here on the podcast to a deeper level. Second, if you haven't already gone over to iTunes and left us a rating and review and also subscribe to the show, would appreciate you taking the time to do so. It takes about a minute and a half tops to do that for us. You can go over to kenyonziska.com/iTunes. It'll take you right to the page. It's super simple, super quick, and helps get the word out about what we're talking about here on the show and helps people find us. And lastly, if you're looking to band together with a tight-knit group of guys who are doing the work, implementing the strategies and the tools that we are talking about here on the show and holding each other accountable. So if you're interested in that, you can apply at kenyonziska.com/results. It's a short application. Just want to make sure that we're a good fit for each other. And also, if you've been on the fence about joining in, I am going to be raising the prices on the mastermind at the end of the month here. It's August as of this recording, so September 1, 2018, I'm going to be bumping the prices up. All right, guys, enough on all that. Let's get into the interview with Scott Beebe. Scott, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the Zero Excuses Podcast. Excited to have this conversation.
Man, I'm amped. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. You're a high energy guy, so I got to stand behind that.
Awesome. So you're the founder and head coach of My Business on Purpose, and you also have a podcast, Business on Purpose. But why don't you give yourself a quick introduction here? Let us know who you are, and maybe we could start diving into your background on how you arrived at doing what you do today.
Yeah. So my intro will be quick. I mentioned to you earlier, we wake up. In fact, at the time of this recording, it's Monday. It's my favorite day of the week because it's the day that we get to wake up and liberate small business owners from their chaos. So that's what drives us during the week. And then Ashley and I have been married just over 20 years, and we've got three just totally fun kids. In fact, one of them starts their senior year of high school today.
Wow.
So it's a big day for us around the household. And that's kind of our life is we like to be a family that's around the world. We've been working in Nigeria since 2006. Mm-hmm. My wife just got back from there a couple of weeks ago, taking a group over there. And we're a kind of a group of traveling banshees who happens to have a home base in the low country of South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not too far from me. But how did you get into helping small business owners, liberating themselves from working in their business or from that chaos? Like, how did you arrive at that? What did you see? Were you working in the corporate world, or what did that look like?
Since 1998, from 1998 till about 2013, I was kind of in corporate environments, and it was a stint that I was actually in the church. I was an associate pastor and then actually planted a church out of that. It was kind of part of their growth strategy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so we did that it was about a 5 or 6 year window in between the corporate experience that had gone on for these kind of global multinational corporations. So I was cutting my teeth on the organizational health aspect of business within the corporate setting. And then when I was in these really small, kind of more faith-based, non-governmental, nonprofit settings, then I was learning about the reality of human drama, and not in a negative way. It's just reality of human drama, how human interaction, personality all work together. So we stuffed all that together. 2013, I left Pfizer, I was working for at the time, and ended up going to work full time to become the international director for the little small faith-based non-governmental we were volunteering with since 2006. And so I'd helped them develop their vision, their mission, their values, their overall structure, where they were headed. And they asked if I would leave Pfizer and come do that. So we did that for 2 years. And Kenyon, that was my first kind of real life awakening to life as a kind of an employee that was totally answerable to a board. So just imagine a CEO in a corporation. And I've never been in that role before. And so it was really interesting to learn a lot. And on February 27, 2015, I walked into our 4th consecutive emergency board meeting, and I walked out unemployed because 8 of our 9 board members resigned on the spot due to some internal board stuff that was going on, and nothing I could control. And so I literally walked out. They had to dissolve that position within the organization. Those board members felt horrible. So they kind of led us along to a little severance, and we took that thin landing pad, took half of it, invested in a coach. Aaron Walker's my business coach, and invested in Aaron. And that was 2000. That was March, I think, 2nd or 3rd or something like that, right after the 27th of February. And we just kind of got pushed into the pool, and just didn't really know how to swim in the entrepreneurial pool, and just started to swim. And with Aaron's help and the help of Dan and some of the other guys that were really around us, pushing us, and then, of course, these heroic clients that we got to serve, we took the plane off. And so we've been going now for about 3.5, 4 years. And it's just been really, really interesting, dynamite, depressing, fun, all of it, all the emotion wrapped into a nice little package called a small business.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but I want to back up to what you mentioned about how you were on a thin landing pad, but you felt compelled to invest in a business coach. I think there's a lot to be said for that decision that you made at that point in that juncture of your life, because there's a lot of business owners who might hesitate to make such an investment. Can you maybe break down your mindset at that point in time? Because I think that's where a lot of people, like I said, can get hung up at.
Yeah. Sometimes, Kenyon, I wonder if, you've heard the phrase something like desperation is the mother of invention, and necessity, and all of those.
Right.
The reality was, it's not that I had this adamancy that I was not going back to corporate life, but I didn't want to. And so I'd like to say that I stuck a flag in the ground, planted a stake, and said, "Dang it, never again." But the reality was I thought I don't want to do that. And moreover, the more compelling urge was I want to start a business that's genuinely going to serve small businesses. And so as we started to meet with small businesses, I had a couple of buddies who own small businesses locally, met with them. And the story is a little bit almost juvenilely hilarious. And I sat down with them and I said, "Hey, you guys kind of know what's been going on. I want to write a proposal to do some work for you." And they were like, "Yeah." Both of them were like, "Oh, okay. What would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, what do you need?" And they were like, "Well, we don't know." And so we started to visit and to talk, and ended up finding out that they really were wrestling with kind of straight vision of the company. Like, where we've had some growth, there's some success and wind behind our backs, but like, what do we do with all of this? And what I've found, Kenyon, is success and a lack of success both breed their own challenges and problems. And so these guys had great success, but they didn't know where the ship was going. And so we did a 1-day, all-intensive vision, mission, values workshop that I literally wrote from scratch. And they really enjoyed it. Did a follow-up meeting, sit down, and just kind of go over everything. And when we did that, one of them goes, so what's next? And I just said, maybe we start meeting weekly. And he was like, "That's awesome. How much?" And I told him, and he was like, "Perfect." And we've been meeting weekly ever since. And so we're many years into this adventure. And those guys not only saw the value in the initial launch to see their vision, but they're also continuing to see the value to sit down and to constantly be challenged around things like systems and processes, and embedding those things, new hire process, job site cleanliness process, those sorts of things that we can embed into the business that bolster the ship while the winds take the ship in a certain direction on the GPS that they've laid out in their vision.
Yeah, there might be a lot of people out there who hear the term vision, mission, values, and kind of roll their eyes a little bit and think it's kind of cheesy. But I've discovered, even in my personal life, let alone my business here with Zero Excuses, that having that vision is so important. As cheesy as you might think it is, it's very important to know what you want and where you're going, because you're just going to live life by default, or you're going to be running your business kind of fly by the seat of the pants. Can you maybe break down what vision means to you and what that means in the context of what you're helping small business owners do?
How we define it, Kenyon, is a vision is a detailed snapshot of the future of your business. Mm-hmm. And so if we look back historically, a lot of times we think that vision is kind of it's this Harvard Business Review concept that came out in the 80s and came out of the halls of Harvard. No, vision is age old. It's ancient. Mm-hmm. And so if you go back as near term as the beginning of the U.S. military, obviously, of which you're very familiar with, right? You imagine going into a war where there is no vision. In fact, I dare say that we've been in some of those wars in the history of the United States. There's other people who have gone to war with no clarifying, unified vision. Now, it's not to say there's not vision present. What ends up happening is you've got your vision, I've got mine. And so when you've got fragmented vision, there is no vision. But there's also very proverbial. Where there is no vision, people scatter. That's actual proverb from thousands of years ago. Where there is no vision, people scatter. And if you think about it today, it's one of the first questions we'll ask a heroic small business owner when they call. And usually it sounds something like this: my hair's on fire, being pulled in 17 different directions, constantly stretched, working in my business, not on my business. So we'll hear those phrases. And one of the questions we'll ask is, hey, where are you going? Where is this ship headed? And usually they don't have a unified, clarified response to that. And so even when you ask me, Scott, what do you do? We liberate small business owners from their chaos. We are very clear on that. It's everything we talk about, and everything that we've got on our 12-week plan that we renew every 12 weeks centers around that one concept. And that's not our vision. That's our mission statement. But that mission is uniquely tied to our longer-term vision of breaking that down. And so we've got a very specific process. There's 7 categories. I'll give you a couple of them, and we can dive into the whole thing if you want to, but a couple of them just so you can see the depth of clarity. Obviously, you want to put down in your vision the term. How far out do you see your business? And we usually recommend somewhere in the 3-year range. Anything beyond 4 or 5 years is just way too long these days. And then anything shorter than about 18 months is just too near term. And so usually around the 3-year mark is where we found that people can kind of put their hands around a snapshot of their business. Mm-hmm. And so we want to know, how far out is it? Number 2, what is the family? And you just mentioned this. What does your family and your freedom look like in that term? So let's just say it was 3 years. What do you want for your family? And so, Kenyon, for you, you may look and go, hey, I want to go on a date night every other week with my wife. I want to, whatever it might be. And that's literally one that's on mine. We've got 3 getaways annually for my wife and I, just an overnight to Charleston or Savannah or wherever. But that's in our vision for our business. It's just under the section. And so we start to detail what that looks like. And then in 3 years for me to look and go, okay, currently my own personal freedom is, let's just say, for instance, I have to work Monday through Friday at 2 on any given week. I have to work. Well, in 3 years, what I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to work about 4 solid days a week, but I want it to be cut up, and I want to have more mobility and flexibility around that. And so you specify that in the freedom section. And then the third one's the financial. You got to write down, what do you want your profit to be that funds your family and freedom in that amount of time. And then once you've determined your profit, we work backwards to revenue, because I really don't care what your revenue is. What I'm really intriguingly interested in is what's your profit. And then that'll help determine the revenue.
Yeah, I really like that, because a lot of business plans definitely do not include that family aspect. I mean, we talk about work-life balance, but if you ask me, that's a loaded term. I think that it's all just life, and your business supports your life, and your life supports your business. So I really like how you approach that, and that's definitely something that resonates with me. That's something I include in my processes and whatnot. Can you kind of maybe quickly break down what the difference in your mind between a vision and a mission is?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So when you think through this, Kenyon, and the vision, if a vision is a detailed snapshot of the future of your business, a mission is that in miniature. And so the best metaphor I can come up with, since you and I live in the South, is up in the hills and the mountains of North Carolina, West Virginia, where they made what they called white lightning or the moonshine up in those hills. And if you think about moonshine, I've never seen it face to face. I've never even drank it. Probably maybe ought to think about taking a sip if I want to do this metaphor, but I don't know that I want to, because I've heard enough stories. So the way I've heard that moonshine is made is you got a big vat of what they call mash. I have no idea what's in the mash. I'm sure it's some grain or something, but it's kind of starting to liquefy, and they stir that thing up, and it's a big 55-gallon drum of mash. So you've got all this stuff in this drum, and you can kind of envision that to be your vision. And so that all of the details are in that drum. But then when they hook a hose up to it and they do some process of heating and cooling and heating and cooling and heating and cooling, the condensed version of that mash drops into a glass jar, and that is the moonshine. And from what I've been told, when you take a taste of that moonshine, bam, it blows your mouth up. And it might blow some other things up too. But the reality is it's just one drop, just one little drop. And so, again, I'll go back to ours, liberating small business owners from their chaos. When somebody asked me, Kenyon, hey, Scott, so what do you, I just got this asked yesterday. We were at a cross-country event for our kids, new family there, was meeting the new family. What do you do? What do you do? And so when he asked me, hey, Scott, what do you do? I had a buddy of mine standing next to me, and you could almost see my buddy start to grin because he knew where I was going, because I answered this way every time. And I said, well, what we do is we liberate small business owners from their chaos. And I just stopped. And he goes, oh, how do you do that? And so what it leads to is greater dialogue. Now, What I've also found, Kenyon, is if I answer their response with my mission and they don't ask me a follow-up, then there's no reason to carry on the conversation. They're not interested, and that's okay. But I've kind of drawn a line in the sand in that conversation to find out, is this person interested in really knowing what I do? Because if I really dig down, I don't want to glaze them over. But if I say we liberate small business owners from the chaos and they have a follow-up of, so how do you do that? Then what we can dive into are the details of what we do. But as Simon Sinek so clearly states, nobody cares near as much about the details of what you do as to why you do it. And so the mission really is your why, but it's a condensed drop from the vision story. So imagine heating and cooling that vision story, and then one little drop comes out. That's the mission statement. It's what drives you out of bed every day.
Gotcha. And thanks for clarifying that, because I think people get those two terms mixed up sometimes, and it's important that people understand the difference on that. But you're a big systematizing and processing guy. I'm by trade, I'm a mechanical engineer, dabbled in some process engineering, so I'm excited to dive into this a little bit. Where do you see small business owners lacking in their systems and processes?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so this is a very broad question. Can be responded to, and so let me identify some targets that I think will be helpful. One way that we see heroic small business owners lacking in their systems is they don't have them because they don't have a vision. And so when they don't have a vision, it perpetuates this chaos. And in the perpetuation of the chaos, they become firefighters, just putting out fires, and never build a fire truck and a hose and then train other people that are called firefighters to go put those things out. And so because of the lack of the vision, it creates this chaos. So that's one way we see it. A second way we see it is people will actually have vision in place and they feel the need for process, and they've got healthy vision in place. They feel the need for process, but they don't equip themselves with what we call the systems mindset. They feel like they've got to go on a 3-day offsite to build all the systems and processes out at once. And that feels so daunting, it paralyzes them to do nothing at all. So that's the second way we see it, is they've got a clear vision, but they don't have process because they think the only way you can do it is ways that don't speak to them. The third way is we see heroic small business owners who have no vision, but they have process. It's kind of like having a Ferrari with no destination in mind, and you're not knowing where you're going. So you've got this great automobile. You've got this beautiful automobile, and you just start driving. And just imagine you had kind of geographical amnesia, and you don't have a map. And so you just start driving, and you're driving, and you're driving, and eventually you just run out of gas. And that's what happens to the majority of people, is they'll have some mechanism of process in place. A lot of people running process, they don't even know it. It's just not captured. Yeah. And so they have process in place, but they're destinationless, geography amnesia. They start driving with this killer Ferrari and end up just running out of gas.
Yeah, I know when I started this podcast, even though I was process minded, I did not take careful notes on exactly what I did to take a podcast from. I'm just talking an example here. Take it from idea to you listen to this podcast here, and I didn't realize the amount that I could delegate and just take so much off of my plate to make my life easier. I think there's also some people may not know, or they don't know what they don't know, what's out there. How do you bring in, like, say, technology or other, how do you educate your clients on what the art of possible is, I guess, when it comes to systematizing and processing?
There's two elements, Kenyon, that we talk about endlessly. Number one is the systems mindset. And here's our definition of the systems mindset. Whatever the next thing is that you're about to do, capture it like it's the last time you'll ever do it. And so don't do a 3-day offsite. Try to remember all the process in your head and go do them all at once. Some people can work that way. In fact, I can work that way. But what I've had to train myself to do is the systems mindset. So, for instance, just last week, we had a client call and say, hey, can I get all of our disc profiles on one spreadsheet with names, links, primary letter, stress letter, and the videos that we put together to go with them to describe them? And in my mind, I'm going, God, that's going to take me forever. Yes, of course, we're going to do that. So what I did is I did it for one person while I had this cool little tool called Loom. If you just go to useloom.com, at the time of this recording, it's free. I'm sure it's an acquisition play that they'll sell at some point. But if you go there right now, it's a screen capture software. It's just like ScreenFlow or Screencast-O-Matic or some of these others. But essentially, you're recording your screen as you're doing something. So what I did is I went on the spreadsheet and I put in one name with one link, one primary letter, one secondary letter, and the video that goes with it, and said, all right, Abby, can you go to this list of names, which is about 30 long, and can you do this for all those lists of names? It was on video. I sent it to Abby. Abby then sends me an email. Actually, this morning, I sent that to her on Friday. She sends me an email this morning. It's like, hey, it's done. It's complete. And Abby has been working on it, and it's totally done. And I didn't have to do anything with it other than just do it one time, hit the record button, send that recording to Abby. And she didn't have to ask any questions, because if she had any, she just hit rewind. And so as long as you're capturing the system in the moment, it'll take you 2 minutes extra to do it. And the reason I like use Loom is because you don't have to upload anything. It's automatically in the cloud. And you literally take a link the second you're done with it and send it to whoever you need to send it to. You can archive it. You can download them and put them in folders. So you've got those processes in the future. But you've got to start. Actually, Mike McCallowich uses this term, which I really like. Instead of building systems, you got to start capturing systems, because you're
Yeah, I like that. That's definitely a resource I did not know about. So hopefully our listeners are grabbing a pen and paper and writing this down, because I'm sure we'll have some more golden nuggets like that coming up here. But one of the big things that I started using here recently was if this then that. What else is out there? What else can you clue us in on that may not be so obvious?
So I'm going to take a page from Seth Godin. I know there's probably a lot of people that listen to Seth Godin. He asked all the time, hey, what do you use for well, I forget. I think it was writing notes or whatever. And he said, I'm not going to answer that. I was like, what a jerk. And he said, but here's the reason I'm not going to answer that is because if I do that, you're going to get lost in trying to find the tool. And so here's what I'll answer for that. I think if then that is an awesome tool.
Yeah.
By the way, we use Google Drive for like everything. 90 to 95% of our, now they're probably stealing our personal information, but 90 to 95% of our businesses run on Google Drive. And even just using a simple Google document is an incredible way to document something that other people get immediate access to. And so there are gobs of stuff out there. Here's what I want to encourage everybody to do and what we really hammer home with our heroic small business owners. Whatever you have, use it. And so if you got 2 legs, 2 arms, and a brain, use them. If you got 2 arms, no legs, and a brain, use them. Whatever you've got, use it. And most people are going to have a calendar of some kind. Use it. And if you're not using it, then start there with whatever you have and use that thing. Is there a bigger, better one out there? Of course there is. There's always going to be a bigger, better mousetrap. But for us personally, we stay kind of within the Google environment for most of what we do. And then we've got a couple extra tools like Use Loom and then our CRM that we use and some different things. But outside of that, we try to keep it ridiculously simple.
Yeah, I love the simplicity model, and there are some definite great tools out there, but definitely make judicious use of them. And I use pen and paper more than anything else to do my daily planning. And I've tried a bazillion different apps, and the pen is mightier than the sword, and I get tremendous use out of that. One other thing that you talk about are 2 non-negotiables in running a small business. I don't know if you might have touched on this already, but I wanted to dive into that as well. What are those 2 non-negotiables? Well,
the first one we talked about was the vision story. That is non-negotiable. That's step number 1. I don't care where you're at. Every single human that's listening to this, that's step number 1. And in most cases, a lot of people are going to say, well, I've got vision. Usually it's a paragraph on a plaque, or it's in a binder sitting on a shelf. I'm not talking about that kind of vision. I'm talking about detailed snapshot of the future of your business in those categories. And we've got a tutorial and a template that we give everybody access to. I'll tell you about that in just a little. And it's not a bait and switch thing. It's just up there. We found that if small business owners are serious about growth, then we're serious about providing them an opportunity to do that, kind of the first step to do that. And so we can talk about that later. But the second is team meetings. And I wish I had something, Kenyon, that was sexier, that sounded more interesting, more inviting. But the reality is, what Cameron Harold wrote a couple of years ago, the former COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, a simple book title called Meetings Suck. And a lot of times they do. And the reason they do, in fact, what we like to add is that meetings suck the life out of people. And the reason is they're not agenda-driven, they're not leader-led, and they're not predictable. But if you had predictability, agenda-driven, and leader-led in your discussion with a team, your vision is not going to have a choice but to be achieved because of the communication. And so it's no different than Ash and I. I mentioned earlier we've been married just over 20 years. If she and I made a decision, consciously or unconsciously, to essentially cease our communication with one another, I don't think it would take that long before we started having real challenges in our marriage, just because we're not communicating. But the reality is, if we can communicate on a predictable schedule, we've got a chair on the back porch that we sit, our little sofa kind of thing that we sit in, and that's our place. That's where we go in the evenings when our kids are kind of doing their thing. And we've actually had our kids come out and we've told them, hey guys, this is our time. So it's not your time. And some of the people listening are going, oh my God, what a jerk. But that's what we do. We prioritize that time. And it's no different in a small business. You have to prioritize the team meetings. You have to walk by an agenda. There's got to be one leader in the room. Distractions have to be rooted out. So no phones, no computers other than the one person taking notes. You follow your agenda. You follow back up on last week's action items, prepare for next week's action items, and then move on. And once you've got those things in place and they're running on autopilot every single week at minimum, then you've got real communication happening in the business. But that goes back to that diagnostic question, Kenyon. If I ask somebody, hey, do you have your vision written out in detail form? Typically, they're going to say no. So what that tells me is there's scatteredness in the business. Then if I were to ask, do you have a regular, predictable means of communication? like a team meeting? Well, we sometimes, and as soon as they say that, it tells me no, you don't. So the reason you're scattered is because you don't know where you're going. The reason that you have no cohesiveness and you feel like your culture's crap is because you don't communicate. And so if those two things are in existence, we can build everything else. But if those two things are not in existence, everything else is moot. It's point. We could get your profit up. We could get your processes up. We could get all of those things up. But you don't know where you're going, and you've got no means of communication, which means your culture is going to stink.
Yeah, that's one thing that, once I was getting this podcast going, I had trouble communicating with my wife. And, even if you are a solo entrepreneur, having a meeting with your family about what's going on with your business is important. So you can communicate, why you are spending, it actually justifies, well, not really justifies, but it explains why you're spending time on the business. And it also helps your family feel integrated into what you're doing as well.
Wow.
But you also mentioned 4 steps to business freedom. We've probably been covering them all here throughout this conversation, but let's maybe lay those out. What are those 4 steps, and can you go into detail on each of those 4 steps?
Yeah, absolutely, Kenyon. Thanks for asking. So when we get into the 4 steps, essentially it's an entire process for heroic small business owners. And what we found, and the reason that we built it, there are so many powerful foundational books. There's kind of the Godfather circle of guys: Michael Gerber with E-Myth, Sam Carpenter of Work the System, Gina Weckman of Traction, and you've got some others that are in there that we love to. In fact, when we start working with somebody, one of the first books we send them is E-Myth from Michael Gerber. Mm-hmm. Well, what we found in reading a lot of these books is a lot of these books focused heavy on vision, or heavy on process, or heavy on hiring, or heavy on team meetings. But there wasn't a complete work that focused on all of it. And so if I'm starting a new business, I just want to know everything that I need to do. And there's one short exception, and it's because you need to go get this stuff from a lawyer or CPA. But outside of the lawyer CPA stuff, we provide everything through the 4 steps. That's why we built it the way that we built it. And so as you look at it, essentially the 4 steps are pretty straightforward. And a lot of what we've been talking about are inherent within them. So our first step is our fast start to profit. That's where a business owner writes down that 3 to 6 page vision story. They build out what we call their delegation roadmap. And so it's every task that they currently do. I mean, every one of them. If you take out the trash, we make you write it down. And you rank that according to the amount of time, the amount of energy, how delegatable it is, and how much money it's costing. We can really drill that down to the amount of dollars it's costing you by doing that one task and not giving it up to somebody else. And so we take them through that. We take them through the 5 bank account structure that's found within Profit First, build out their team meetings, teach them how to build an actual process so they can replicate that. And then we have them build out their non-negotiable weekly schedule. This is where they get really anxious once we do that. So that's the first step. The second step is where we build out the business foundations. Got to get your core values, because you're going to start making big boy decisions based on those. We just had a client make a $115,000 decision, turned that money away actually because of one of his core values. Mm-hmm. And so those are real. Those aren't cute pie in the skies kind of stuff. 12-week plans. We've got everybody in our Business on Purpose ecosystem on the same 12-week plan cycle. The next one's September 20th. All around the world, there's going to be small business owners that are drawing up their new 12-week plan. And if you want any more information on that, go read Brian Moran's 12-week year book, powerful book that he writes about that. And then the org chart, job roles, and then what we call your level 2 dashboard. And so it's running your business from a cockpit. And so we literally build the cockpit within that second step. The third step is the passion and the people. That's where we bring in the mission statement, build that out. And then what's called, and this is kind of the mothership, it's called the Master Process Roadmap. So Kenyon, imagine let's take your podcast and the business that you're building. Imagine every process that goes into that: invoicing, bookkeeping, podcast notes, interview setup, all of it. And you put it all on one sheet of diagrammatic paper. And in each one of those blocks where each one of those processes diagrammed, there's a link that'll actually take you to the written or the video-based process for that. So every process is on one sheet of paper. And so if you ever went to sell your business or hire somebody new, you take them right there. Go, hey, this is our business, on one sheet of paper. and it is incredibly powerful. And we also teach people how to hire step by step. We've got a 7 steps to anxiety-free hiring process. And then the final step is the culture process. We worked with our buddy Jesse Cole. Just Google the Savannah Bananas, and you'll see what I'm talking about. He helps articulate out what powerful culture looks like, performance reviews, and some of those internal culture things like software. Not necessarily the brands of software, but what types of software do you need if you're a small business owner, whether it's accounting, customer relationships, and all that. So we've really embedded everything that we could think of. We're about to add a budgeting module as well, so that if a small business owner goes through it, they've got every box checked with what they need to actually work on their business and spend less time working in their business.
Yeah, I want to back up to what you mentioned about delegation, because I think that a lot of people who are, solo entrepreneurs who are just getting going, I think they can get hung up on that delegation piece. How do you help maybe those types of business owners kind of get past that hurdle in terms of mindset, and how do you help them coach them through that hurdle?
Yeah, we had a lady come in one time. This was a couple of months ago. Her name was Jennifer, and Jennifer came in and was kind of a prototypical small business owner. I mean, just hair on fire, constantly running, going, trying to juggle the business and juggling family and everything. And when we got to the delegation roadmap, Jennifer's like, I really think I know what I need to do, and was just hem-hawing, would not dive in. And what we realized is for her to block out an hour to sit down and do this felt like torture to her. And so what we did is we had all the other business owners really rally around her and go, hey, no, you need to do this and we'll help you. And so we helped her get started in the first few, and she's like, well, that's not that bad. And then ended up walking through the rest of her task list. She had a page and a half of tasks written down. These are 60 or 70 tasks written down. And she stepped back from that, Kenyon, and looked and went, oh my gosh, this is why my hair's on fire. And when we started putting dollars to it, and she started seeing that her doing bookkeeping was costing the business about $2,000 to $3,000 a month, and she could hire a bookkeeper for $400 to $800 a month, all of a sudden she saw these real figures in real time, and she realized not only would she save money by hiring a bookkeeper, but she would actually get those 10 hours a month or 15 hours a month back that she wouldn't replace with new business. What she would do is she would go home and she would rest, because she was working 60 to 65 hours a week and had no rest. And that's just with the business, not even including the family. And so that's been the biggest barrier that we've seen with small business owners, is they think that the exercise itself is so just kind of mind-numbing and overwhelming. And once they get into the first couple, they go, oh my gosh, this is refreshing. It's reinvigorating. And this is where we get into the liberation part of what they can start doing.
Yeah, so you basically help them recognize what the opportunity they have in front of them to save money and win back their time. I mean, I'm kind of going through the same process right now, realizing, where I can delegate, and I wish I would have done it a long, long time ago. So, if you're listening out there and you're kind of struggling with this, you really got to put the pedal to the metal, maybe reach out to Scott even and see where he can help you out with. But Scott, we are starting to wind down on time here, but I wanted to make sure I left a little bit of time here at the end to give you the opportunity to let people know how to get in touch with you, how they can reach out to you and find out more information on what you've got going on.
Oh man, thank you, Kenyon. I told you offline that putting on a podcast is hard work. It's sweaty work. And so I'm humbled that you would share this stage with us. What we've done is a few months back, we just kind of had an aha moment. We were giving away little templates and PDFs and all that. And we thought, wait a second, if there are small business owners who are serious about doing something and kind of taking the next step, this liberation we talk about, we actually took our entire vision tutorial, the video tutorial, and the template. So 100% of it, we've held nothing back. We didn't cut anything out. It's not bare bones and you're just going to take step 1 and step 2. It's the whole thing. It's all 7 categories. It's the template that goes with it. It's all there. And so we ask actually that if you go here, that if you download it, we ask you to do it. And you're going to need to block out about 2 to 3 hours. Doesn't have to be all at once, but 2 to 3 hours over a few days to sit down. The tutorial only takes about 20 minutes to get through. but to sit down and really think and draw out your vision story for your business. It will be a life-altering, legacy-changing activity if you do it. And so if you just go to mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision, and all you got to do is put it in an email. You don't have to wait on it for emails to come back. Honestly, we do it because we just want to see who's serious about it. Put in your email, and it'll pop right up right there in the web browser. You'll have access to it. You can get started on it immediately. You don't have to wait for this long chain of emails to come out. But again, we ask that if you download it, that you go ahead and calendar the time to do it, because we know it's going to alter where you're going in your small business.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to take advantage of that myself personally, even though, I'm pretty big on vision myself. Definitely want to take advantage of that, and definitely can implement some new things into what I'm doing, not only in my business here, but in my personal life as well. So I'm sure that'll be tremendously beneficial to everyone who's listening to this right now. Scott, any other last save rounds here before we wind things down?
No, man, listen, that's the first place. If I'm ever asked, what's the next step? It's vision, vision, vision. Where there's no vision, people scatter. And there's another quote out there that says, write the vision down so that those who read it may run. And that is wisdom from about 2,000 years ago. So write the vision down so that those who read it may run. If it was good back then, it's probably still good today. So go ahead and start writing it down. It's there for you. It's available. All you got to do is take action.
Awesome, man. Well, again, appreciate your time here on the show today, and look forward to staying in touch and maybe connecting here in person. We're about an hour away from each other, so not too much of an excuse not to connect.
Boxcar Betty's, man. We got to go have one of those fried mushroom sandwiches at Boxcar Betty's.
Boxcar Betty's, yeah, that's right around the corner from me. So, yeah, let me know.
All right, Kenyon. Hey, thanks, man.
Alrighty, take care.
Thank you for tuning in to the Zero Excuses Podcast. Join the conversation at kenyonzitska.com in our Facebook group. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to our show. We'll talk to you next week. And always remember, results, not excuses.